All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Inside In Tennis Podcast. Mitch Michals here on the Believe Network. A lot of great content here. This show is available on every one of your apps. We're moseying along here on the Inside In Podcast, talking about the tennis season. Rome in the rearview, Roland Garros less than a week away. It's that exciting time of the year where tennis really peaks in a lot of ways. And joining me now, a veteran of not just tennis, but broadcasting in general, a name brand in the broadcasting space, if you will. Ted Robinson, welcome back to the show, rocking the Twins hat. Where were we coming in from, Florida?
A little vacation time, Mitch. We do this, my wife and I do this with our close friends sometime every spring, and it's in the past it's worked around Madrid or Rome. But as I say, it's white sand beaches, $2 oysters, $2 cold beer. It's pretty hard to beat that this time of year.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I'm just getting nostalgic thinking about it, but no, it's great to have you on the show, and it's always fun, right? We're at an interesting time. We're in the lead up to Roland Garros, and you've been around a lot of iterations of the sport. There's been ebbs and flows of really just the game, the players at the top. There's been some consolidations of power, but nothing quite like this buildup. And I know, we're looking at it from a different lens without Nadal and some of the big names there, but can't really beat the lead up to a major.
No, and of course I'm slightly partial, having worked so many Roland Garroses, but I always loved the stretch, because obviously it's always in Europe, but I love the stretch starting with Monte Carlo, which they don't even need to play matches. Just put Monte Carlo on the screen for 6 hours. To me, it's tennis's answer to Pebble Beach. Like, I don't need to see the golf. Just show me Pebble Beach. But to go through Madrid and then Rome, which is also scenic. I mean, the historic site of Foro Italico. It's always great. And, the funny part is we're saying this, and as we all know, sadly, in the 21st century, the American men have not really had any success to speak of. Women have. We've had a wonderful array of women play well at Roland Garros. The men haven't, yet it still holds this magical allure to us because of that book. It's over your right shoulder.
I know.
And of course, that's what makes everything different about this year, is this is the first one in 20 years without that guy being a part of it.
Yeah, it will be nice to see him honored and, with some closure on just the legendary run that I don't think we'll ever see again, the dominance of a single event in sports. But, I digress too, because there's openings, but there's really not openings for long. And we'll get to the Italian Open final too. Like the generational shift, like Ted, we've seen it in other sports where a great goes away and we're wondering who's going to fill the void. It usually doesn't take very long for somebody to step up. We're seeing it on the men's side. We've seen it on the women's side with Iga Swiatek, dominant number one. So these voids exist, but they are really a moment in time.
Yeah, and that's one of the benefits that comes with experience, I like to say. I've seen this. You've seen a lot, and I've heard the same fears over and over again as generations change. Oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? Going back to when, John and Jimmy and Yvonne were finishing, and what's going to happen next. And there's always something. To me, stepping back and looking from a distance at the bigger picture, now what's surprising to me is that you can't say, I don't know, I think you could say the men are wide open. I've heard that thrown around, wide open. Mm-hmm. Look at the rankings. Two men have pulled away from everybody. And the two young guys, Sinner and Alcaraz. Now, Zverev's point total is still there, and he has had 3 shots in finals. We'll see if he can keep that up. But the rest, I mean, the distance is staggering. So those two have pretty much, to me, are starting on the same path Roger and Rafa were in the late 2000s, and then eventually Novak caught them. But I'm finding that startling.
Yeah, they've already played so many times, right, too? That's the thing. I mean, Djokovic and Nadal is the record for all those matches they played, which, I think it's about 60 or so. So we'll see if Sinner and Alcaraz get to that total, but they've already played a lot. They've already banked a lot of matches. And before we get into Rome, Ted, one thing that I do think is interesting this year that I've noticed in my limited time in the tennis space, but I feel like there's more players playing this week than ever before, more names. Like you're looking, and there's a lot of different tournaments going on. The men are in Geneva. We've got action in Hamburg as well. Women are in Strasbourg and Rabat. But I'm seeing names of players playing these tournaments like they need some extra reps, maybe more than I've noticed before.
Plus, it's a 500. A 500 in the Hamburg a week before a major. It may have happened. I'm not the historian on this stuff, but I can't remember a 500 event the week leading into a major. So Yeah, and look, what's happened in tennis in recent years. So you have, as you said, the players who know they're going to be in the draw at
Mm.
RG are stepping up and playing more than ever. And then you still have, and you have qualies going on. You have
Yeah.
250 players right now, starting as we're speaking, starting today at RG, playing in the qualies. And what the U.S. Open has really established, and now I think the other majors are going to jump in. Quali week is the real deal. It makes it a 3-week event. And the U.S.
Yeah.
Open did it, and they did it successfully. Give them credit. And I think RG is going to step up. And now, we know Roland Garros long ago conquered its allergy towards making money and trying to make as much money as they can. So here's
Yeah.
another week of doing so with the qualies, and you've got good players and good names. Borna George, for goodness sakes, a successful, very successful pro in the past. He's the number one seed for the men in the
Yeah.
qualies. You have big names there.
Yeah, very exciting. And yeah, these are 3-week majors. Now you hit the nail on the head there. It's pretty funny and some good storylines, which we'll get to. But I want to take it back to yesterday. Rome in the rear view. The Italian Open was won by Carlos Alcaraz over Jannik Sinner. He defeats the hometown player. And really, it was the dazzling Carlos Alcaraz display, Ted, because you watched that match. Sinner was looking great. His first tournament back, destroys Ruud, turns it around after a bad first set against Tommy Paul. Everything's in his favor. What Alcaraz proved yet again was that when he's at his best, at least on clay, and maybe everywhere, he is the best in the
Yeah.
world. He turned it on and he dazzled. But the thing that stands out to me is what he said after the match. He said what we kind of all thought watching it. He said, tactically, that was the best match I ever played. So Alcaraz kind of getting that mind and getting that game plan side of him. Good luck, everybody, is my takeaway.
So there's a couple of easy points
Yeah.
to point out. Look, Sinner
Mhm.
to make the finals in Rome. Come on, to make the Masters final,
Yeah.
coming off his absence. Okay, that's terrific. Alcaraz on clay. Not sure that's a huge surprise that he would be the favorite
Yeah.
over Sinner. Um, the fact that Jannik is still number one, um, despite the absence, I think it's all been declared. I mean, that's to me. If you look at Zverev and his emotions lately, to me that has to be connected. The fact that he
Mhm.
couldn't really make up ground on Sinner during the 3-month absence. And then I was really taken because I heard what Andre Agassi had to say last week. I think it was before the final, but he made a
Mhm.
point about the two of them that it's what makes Andre. It's going to make Andre a brilliant analyst for tennis on television as long as he wants to do it, since he's going to be starting here coming up in a week or
Mhm.
two. But he talked about how, look, everybody's movement changes on clay and even a little bit on grass, but Carlos's changes less. And so we tend to focus on the positive. Carlos is this fabulous mover, but Andre positioned a difference that everybody's movement suffers a little bit, right? Except for the truly great clay court players. And Carlos is that. His movement
Yeah.
suffers far less when he gets on the clay. And then on the hard court, Sinner can be more aggressive and take
Uh-huh.
Carlos's ball before the extra rotations and spin kick. And I thought that was, again,
Yeah.
a different way of saying something that we all kind of know. But
Right.
from Andre, it was so perfectly said that people like me could understand.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. Funny to think too. I thought Agassi was great on Tennis Channel Live when he was giving those points, and he played clay a little differently. He
Yeah,
was one. He's like, I'm not going to slide.
right.
I'm the one guy that can
Mm.
do this without their brilliant talent. But yeah, Alcaraz. I mean, he understood too. Even on clay, you don't want to get into a baseline rally. You don't want to just thump with Sinner because we know what he can do. So he'd mix in the drop shot. He'd come to net. He's got, I think. I mean, I don't know the data in front of me, but I'd say the eye test, Alcaraz has the best serve +1 in the sport. But what really stood out, I mean, this is why tennis is beautiful because, among other things, this was a tight first set. Alcaraz had to grind at a 5-6 game to get to a tiebreak, and then he's able to elevate. He's able to redline. And what he does with so many great players that you've seen do, Ted, get that first set, run away early in
Well,
the second.
yeah,
It was Nadalian.
yeah, and that's the point. Is that and
Yeah.
that's what we also have to remember. Sinner had two shots. He had two shots
Hmm.
to win the first
Hmm.
set, and
Yeah.
went for it. Maybe a little too much on one of them, misses both, and bang, that was his window. And I'm not surprised again, given his absence, that once he loses the first set, he's sitting there. Okay, am I prepared to grind another 2+ hours to win
Yeah.
two sets
Well,
against this guy?
well, yeah. And lot to get into with Sinner. Like, yeah, makes the final back. First time he lost since Beijing. It was 26 straight matches. I know the break was in there, but
Yeah.
that's over 220 days or so. Hadn't lost in straight sets since 2023 fall, I think. So we're really going back into this one. But yeah, all things considered, I thought the fitness held up pretty good. He looked a little, he talked about the blister in the Tommy Paul match. And I know he's not coming off of an injury, so it's different. He was practicing, he was training. He probably looked like he added some muscle. But Ted, there is nothing like playing matches, especially playing matches against the best athlete maybe in the world. So I think all things considered, his fitness held up, and we'll see if he's able to. That's the test for him. Can he ramp up his conditioning in time for a best of 5 major next week?
And I chuckle at some of this, again, having heard so much through the years, all these different storylines. And, a dominant narrative lately seems to be there's too many matches. The tournaments are too long, right? And then comes the guy who's out for 3 months and comes back and hasn't played a lot. Boy, he needs matches. And the players you referenced a few minutes ago, Mitch, that are playing this week.
Djokovic,
both men and women that are playing in tour events this week because they want to play matches. So you sit back and you listen to both sides and you kind of chuckle and go, okay, there's always truth in the middle. And I think that's where tennis is on that conversation.
Yeah. There's a luxury of Sinner like being the number one where he can not have to worry about ranking points and money and all those things. So that's the other side of it. But yeah, look, he lost to a generational talent. Like, there's no shame in that. I think he'll be able to make some adjustments. But Alcaraz, for his part, Ted, he answered the only questions we had with him were, what's the injury like? There's been dips. Is he able to get better? I mean, we understand that your peak is only available in glimpses, but Alcaraz showing the world who the dominant clay court player is. And, going into, I think now he's already won every clay court title there is. He completed the hat trick of Masters. So, I mean, if the numbers don't say it, he is the alpha dog going into an interesting Roland Garros.
And Mitch, I'm going to say this, the other part, he made his own comment to your point about, I didn't have the ups and downs, which we've all known that's what you watch for Alcaraz. Can he get that consistent level that the 3 greats that we just watched play all had? But the other point he made that to me was extremely telling was he said, I need Sinner. I need him. And again, to me, that emphasizes the point that those two have pulled away from everybody else. Now, I don't know how long that's going to last, but right now, they pulled away. And he absolutely says, I need Sinner for motivation. And again, this goes way back to my time in tennis when I heard John and say that about Jimmy and Bjorn. And then, of course, the Sampras, Agassi, Courier, Chang group all said they were pushed by each other. And even more recently, the American men have all talked about their internal competition and how it matters to them to be the number 1 ranked American and or to break into the top 10. So the point that Alcaraz said that at such a young age about Sinner to me was very telling.
He's been holding the hammer in this rivalry head to head recently. I know Sinner's ranked ahead and won the most recent slam, but if you look at their last couple matches, even in Asia on hard court, that epic match, it was won by Alcaraz. I wonder, Ted, and you've seen it, and you'd be the perfect person to ask because having seen all the way back to the McEnroe-Borg, McEnroe-Connors era, the big 3, their dynamics, how they're different. Sinner and Alcaraz are friendly. They get along. They really like each other. Alcaraz said, I'm not going to stop saying, what a good person you are. What do you think about that dynamic of it, that there's a friendly space here? It's not as maybe chilly as some of the rivalries of yesteryear.
Yeah. Well, I think, again, look over your right shoulder. There's the gold standard for that, right? Yeah. Nicest guy in the world off the court to everybody. Get on the court, he'd rip your lungs out. I mean, that's what made him the warrior. And so, I would say the jury would, in my view, be very much out on whether Alcaraz has enough of the Rafa quality. Who does would be the comeback to that. I understand. So yeah, at some point, they'll probably have to be that competitive distance if they continue to be the top 2. I would assume that's the case. And then at some point we find out in Alcaraz's case who you really are. Do you have a lot of that or a little bit of that, Rafa, in your DNA?
Yeah, it's right. It's a twofold thing because the best rivalries, there's some ebbs and flows right now. It's all ebbing in Alcaraz's direction. But and this might not happen because Alcaraz is so good, but should Sinner get the upper hand, he's still number 1, but should he beat him a few times? how, and I would assume Alcaraz will handle this gracefully, but that could shift the dynamic too if
Sure.
Alcaraz starts suffering some losses. So it's fascinating, but yeah,
Well,
they've separated themselves for sure. I mean,
sure.
there's no denying that.
And again, the history tells us that Roger was the king, and suddenly here comes this guy from Spain. And Roger got a little bristly at first when he had
Hmm.
somebody challenging him on top of the first time. And then Rafa, in some ways overtook Roger.
Yeah.
And then here comes the guy from Serbia that says, I'll get you both. And yeah, so it
Yeah.
does. It absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not as up to speed on the personal dynamics of Sinner and Alcaraz,
Right.
but living through closely
Hmm.
the other three, seeing it firsthand, that absolutely was what happened.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's safe to say, right, this rivalry seems more like Federer Nadal than Federer Djokovic in
Yeah.
terms of the friendliness and because we could tell from the outside there was a little chillier with Roger and Novak.
Yes, it definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
I've told the story before. I mean, I was watching it on Tennis Channel. I guess they're in Monte Carlo. And this is some years back because Novak's family was still at the matches, and Novak's family were very, very vocal supporters. And there was a point that ended. Roger's playing Novak at Monte Carlo, and Roger walks back by the wall, and
Hmm.
Novak's family's just above him, and Roger doesn't even look up, but the courtside mic picked him up, and he just says, "Shut up." And it was the aggressive
Yeah.
cheering and support from Novak's
Yeah.
family. So those little signs that Roger rarely showed, but the ones that let you know he bristled just a little bit at being pushed.
Yeah. Well, we like it too because some rivalries, whether they're friendly or heated, if the competition's there, it does bring out the best. And just a final note on the men's side from Rome. We talked about the Americans. It was good to see Tommy Paul make a run
Yeah.
through to the semis, have his breakthrough, and even in that match against Sinner, like I can't begrudge obviously a professional athlete in any level based on what they can do, but he had to play out of his mind, and he did for a set. But as Mark Petchy and Jimmy Arias astutely pointed out on the broadcast, it's really hard, next to impossible, to keep that up against a great player the way you have to play.
Yeah, absolutely. And then what puzzles me is that at the top of the sport to see the lopsided sets, and in that match it was both ways. So how do you back
Yeah,
up? How do you back up what Paul did in the first set to then what
yeah,
Sinner was able to do in the second set? That one, again,
yeah,
somebody may give me data that tells me I'm wrong, but I don't recall very much of that with the big
yeah,
boys in the past. Was not many lopsided
yeah.
sets.
It's the beauty of tennis, right? It just resets. One
Yeah,
set is just one set.
yeah,
Then you just start over, and we've seen it. And yeah, again, shout out to Musetti. Lorenzo Musetti has another
yes,
great run. He's been a very consistent player. And even though Casper Ruud lost in the quarterfinals, he followed up Madrid. And I love the fact that he was positive. Like you play a player that's peaking at Sinner's level, it's like he wasn't even mad. It's like I knew that this was just something else today.
right. And there's again to the example of to see a terrific. I mean, Casper Ruud on clay, to have him not just beaten but punished is, we just
Yeah,
I don't have an explanation other than to say
yeah,
those. You look at the scores, you go, whoa. I mean, I had people stopping me back at home last week in California, where I tend to play a little bit, and they were, did you see the score of the Ruud match? I mean, it's like, you can't be
yeah,
kidding me. Is that what happened? So, uh,
yeah.
and again, it highlights the final point that what Sinner did to make the final, coming off 3 months, was terrific.
And Taylor Fritz on Instagram being like, he almost had him. That was the comment he said. It's pretty good.
Thought he had it.
All right, more with Ted Robinson here on the Inside in Tennis podcast, talking Italian Open, gearing up for Roland Garros, which will start this Sunday. On the women's side, how about a hometown hero for the Italian Open on the WTA, and that was Jasmine Paolini, because she beats Coco Gauff. She does it her way, and she really uplifts the crowd in a lot of ways. That moment was pretty cool, having the family there, having everyone there, and then really Ted beating some great players en route to a title. Coco Gauff, straight sets, dominant second sets. I just love Paulini's positive approach, how nothing seems to rattle her. But you watch the actual tennis, Ted, the word that kept coming to mind was precision. This is a player that knows how to pull the trigger, has underrated power for her stature, and just knows everything about clay court tennis. One of the most consistent players we've seen the last couple seasons.
Absolutely. It's a fabulous story. And you hit on a point there, Mitch, that I'm going to quote my dear friend Mary Carrillo, who years back brought the phrase big babe tennis into vogue. And I think Paolini should sell T-shirts that say little babe tennis because
Yeah.
she does. She hit, I mean, it's like Sibylkova before her, hits the ball much bigger than you would expect for someone of her stature. And I think it's great. It's obviously great in tennis because again, I'll go way back to Amanda Kutzer, who was barely 5 foot tall, and in her generation was a top 10 player. And then Sibylkova was, I think she probably made the top 10 at some point. Uh, and now
Hmm.
Paolini is succeeding. I mean, Paolini to be in major finals. You haven't really seen it as much on the men's side, except for Diego Schwartzman. Now, Diego never had the
Yeah.
real run at a major, but he got it pretty high up in the rankings, and he's the one man that I can think of that's defied, his God-given height.
Hmm.
But for Paolini to do it, and of course to do it in Italy, and then to come back and win the doubles with Arani, her close partner, and that's just a great weekend.
There is something to be said about doubles on the WTA. There's definitely more than a correlation now because Coco, the numbers were when she plays doubles in these main draws, she goes further in
Yeah,
singles. Paolini's playing doubles and she's succeeding. She's the only player to make the finals, the tour finals in both last year. So there is a correlation with some of these players at the top, even that playing doubles helps your game. And you see it with her ability to be
yeah,
comfortable at the net and finish. And
and
I'm just not just the moment, Ted, of her winning this on home soil in front of everybody, but her journey. Start of last season, she was ranked about 30,
yeah.
and now she's a bona fide top five player, not flash in the pan at all.
No, absolutely, and that's the point, Mitch. Is that
Hmm.
yeah, she just didn't have 1 month or 4 months. I mean, she's done this now for over 2 seasons, and that's phenomenal. And I think of your doubles comment, and we've always thought that the WTA doubles was usually a better show because more singles players played. But
Hmm.
then you look at Sabalenka, who was
Hmm.
the number one doubles player and stopped playing
Yeah,
doubles with Mertens to concentrate on singles. It's paid off for her, hasn't it?
yeah. It's different strokes for different folks, as they say, but it can help some, and it is helping some. Also, another point I had down: it doesn't. Your serve's not dependent on your height. We've seen it with Polly, and we saw it with Ash Barty too.
Right.
Was the other one I had
That's
written
right.
down. You can
Yeah.
have a good serve if you're not the biggest. But the other point that I wanted to make, Coco Gauff in that match. I think the website for the WTA had like 55 unforced errors, which I'm going to throw the challenge flag on because I think some of those were forced.
Yeah.
I think there's a gray area there. But the point I wanted to bring up, Ted, was Paolini, and I think a lot of players can follow in her lead. There's a fear factor when you're playing a good player. If they have strengths at an elite level, I'm just going to stay away completely from their strengths. You can't do that. You can't be playing in complete fear. Paolini was targeting Coco's forehand, which is the game plan, but she was doing it selectively. I think there's a lesson in that. Sinner Alcaraz, right?
Yeah.
Alcaraz isn't going to shy away from the ground stroke rallies, but he's going to be selective about when he changes things up. So that's another area where I think Paolini shined.
Yeah. And you're to tack on about Goff. I think the other amazing thing, having now trying to watch as much when
Hmm.
Coco's playing, I
Hmm.
try to make sure you catch some of
Hmm.
those matches. And this goes back to my baseball lineage, and I've always thought
Yeah.
there's amazing. My baseball past helped me a lot in tennis
Hmm.
because I think there's stunning similarities, especially serving to pitching. But the other thing that was always said in baseball, back when starting pitchers actually had to start games and pitch into games, not like today, but
Yeah.
that day, the measure of the best pitchers was often said, can he win on a day when he doesn't have his best fastball?
Hmm.
Okay, so can you do that? And that's most of the guys that make the Hall of Fame or a multi-time All-Stars, whatever, are guys that figure out how to win without their best stuff, let's just say.
Yeah.
Coco, to me, is a masterpiece at that, winning without her best stuff. And, we get packaged into the phrase, what a competitor, what a competitor. And I think it's a little bit more detailed than that. It's that whichever of the weapons isn't there, or if someone's picking successfully,
Yeah.
as you just alluded to, on something that isn't working, Coco Gauff finds a way. It finds
Yeah.
a way. It's more than just competing. Yes, it is competing, but it's more than that.
Yeah, you're right. There's a bit to unpack with that. I do think that she battles out there. She
Yeah.
will adjust her game plan. She has variety. She's able to improv, I'll say. The Chin-Win semifinal match, Chin-Win Zhang,
Yes.
was a little rough. Like they were competing, but it wasn't the cleanest tennis. But Coco found a way that the name of the game is get to the finish line with your hand raised, and she was able to do that. I do think, though, that when you're talking about the goal, because you do what she's doing, you're a clear top three player in the world. To win majors, though, to win this Roland Garros, where she absolutely has a chance, she's going to have to elevate her level. I do think that top players eventually get her if she's not able to peak at the right time. So
Yeah.
you know, that's the counter to that. But I think you're right. Like, her ability to find ways to win is an underrated quality and will keep her in the fight. But when you get to the final of a Masters, semifinal of a major, that's when you're going to need, you know, like the best players, they elevate down the stretch.
So here's another comparison which blew my mind to another sport. Rory McIlroy a month ago, 2 double bogeys on the final day at Augusta and still won the Masters. Who does that? So to your point, yes, if Coco's playing again, she's already reached one Roland Garros final. She gets to another final, and you're playing, whether it's Sabalenka or if Swiatek puts herself together, whoever it is, can you have 14 double faults and still win when you're in a final? You can do that in the second round, third round, fourth round, whatever. So yeah, that's fair. And then, of course, the challenge for Coco, and she's already done it once, is to make sure you don't have that day on championship day. You don't have the 14 double fault day. Easy to say, understand, but that to me would be the key. Yeah,
having that experience, having won a major, and like I was saying, everybody is going to be feeling a little more optimistic on the women's side based on the state of Iga Swiatek. But Paolini's in the mix now. I mean, she wasn't among the contenders on the odds list I saw going into last week. She's, I think, vaulted up to like 5th right now. Maybe should be higher, arguably, but with Iga taking a step back, Sabalenka's a slight favorite. You have Coco, Andreeva, Paolini, Chinwin, Zhang, Ted. I think if you're going to talk about things opening up, and it still might be a 2 or 3 woman race, but without Iga at her peak or anywhere close to it, you have women at the top of the game thinking, okay, this could be my year.
And Jess Pegula, who's, I mean, that's where it's amazing right now. You look at the rankings, Sabalenka's pretty healthy number 1, but you have Americans 2 and 3, and that's to see, and right now to see Swiatek at 5, given what's happening.
Not even in her own quarter.
Right.
We could have an Iga Sabalenka quarter or a Gauff Iga quarter like that. That's a huge thing to happen. I'm not optimistic. I'll say if anyone deserves the benefit of the doubt, it's Iga. That's where I'm at, where it's like there's no signs that it's good, but all-time great on clay. If anyone can pull it off, it's her. But it's hard to find confidence right now.
And under the category again of easier said than done, watching her get hammered by Coco in Madrid, and it's just screaming to me, Rafa, Iga Swiatek, and me just watching. You need a massive overhaul of your body language. And I understand, again, you're not just losing, you're getting hammered. It's hard because you're feeling embarrassed, most likely. But my goodness, her team needs to sit her down and again, just make her watch herself. Yeah. And the message and the vibe she was communicating was awful. And I'm thinking back to the Iga a couple of years ago that was in the Roland Garros final against Muchova. Muchova leveled the match in the second set, then was up a break early in the third set. And they sat down, and Swiatek came off the chair and ran out on the court like Rafa would. Even though you're down now in the third set, broke back and streaked forth and won the title. That's what, to me, made Swiatek special. And right now, whatever's going on, if it's outside of tennis, obviously I have no clue. But she's generating a horrible vibe off and on the court.
Yeah, you were, firsthand at some of these majors in Paris, even, right, 2015, 16, when Nadal had a dip. And there were injuries, but there was, like you can talk about, there were body language signs with him. He needed a reset. He needed to stay positive again. It's talked about in the book Over My Shoulder, but sometimes it's not about tennis. It's about how your body language is and how your confidence is.
Yeah. I mean, look, I've said it many, many times. I still say it to coaches in other sports that I'm working. You should, college coaches in particular, you should show your players, your basketball players, a tape of Rafa. He's the greatest body language athlete I have ever seen in any sport. And it's rare because Roland Garros, I think only twice that I can remember did I ever see Rafa's body language dip on the court. And one was at Roland Garros when Novak hammered him. Novak pounded him. And it was probably in that time zone era you were talking about.
15, yeah.
Yeah, and you could just see it. Rafa slumped. And he got the Gumby shoulder thing. And the reason I remember so vividly is you never saw it. Roger did it to him at Indian Wells one year. Same thing. Roger just punished him at Indian Wells. And it was the same thing. You go, wow, how does this? You never see Rafa look that way. And my point is, after watching him play 2,000 matches, I can remember twice that I saw it.
Happens to everyone. But yeah, he was able to find it and never let it go. Yeah, and just the final thing on the top contenders on the women of Roland Garros. It's a great storyline. We're talking about in the broadcast, the TV business, like the storylines here. If Iga figures it out, it's a remarkable turnaround. You could have Sabalenka win her first Roland Garros and enter a different stratosphere and in the pantheon of all-time greats. You would also have maybe a Coco Gauff first-time Andreeva Paolini. Like there's just Chinwen Zhang, like Pagula. Like there's just so many different storylines. Even if Iga does figure it out, it's going to set up pretty spectacularly.
Yeah, and there's another name. It's a great name to watch is Mirra Andreeva. Look, we used to see 18-year-olds. I mean, Martina Hingis was winning at 16 and 17, right? We used to see this. Now we've become out of touch with seeing.
Do you think it's because it's physical? Do you think it's because the game's getting more physical
Absolutely.
and it's hard for a team to,
I would certainly, if you ask me as a guy that watches, not playing, but I would suspect that has to be. And of course, again, Martina Hingis to herself. What happened to Martina Hingis? Venus Williams. And then right behind her, Serena Williams. Physical, strong, and Martina got hit off the court, in those key times, what I'm saying. But Mirra Andreeva, we've all wondered, how can somebody be ready? And man, she keeps answering the question, I'm ready for this, I'm ready for that, I'm ready for this, I'm ready for that. Well, is she ready at RG? That'll be fascinating to watch.
I can't wait. Yeah, Hingis, 200 weeks at number one, always kind of gets lost in the pantheon of some greats. But
yes,
we got a few more things here with Ted Robinson on the Inside In podcast. We're talking the lead up to Roland Garros and just all the excitement. One of the things, too, I want to give a shout-out to the challengers last week because there's been some great challenger events. We had a MPetshi Perricard win a challenger event, and Andre Bublik, who everybody loves, Alexander Bublik, excuse me, winning a challenger. So the depth of the game, what we're seeing, especially this time of year, we talked about needing matches. These are two established guys that played challenger tournaments and won them leading into RG.
Right, which is great. That's great for tennis because, as we were seeing in most of our sports in America, having developmental leagues, the baseball term got hammered in our heads, minor leagues. That sounds a little, in this time, it sounds a little degrading. But anyway, to have developmental play, and my goodness, I mean, again, watching what Paolini just did, seeing Musetti in the top 10, if that doesn't hammer home what, we've been talking about for 10 years, and I vividly remember this, and it was 8 years ago, I was on a vacation trip in the summer through Italy, and I go into a hotel in Rome, put the TV on, and there's a channel that is basically tennis channel in Italy. It's 24/7 tennis called Super Tennis, and it had nothing to do with our tennis channel. It was an Italian tennis channel. I'm going, my God, who could have ever thought that Italy would have a 24/7 channel that's on in the hotel showing just tennis? And then, of course, you hear about all the challengers and futures they're playing and all the opportunities for their people to play. And now we're seeing, if you're paying attention, you're getting hammered across the head with the success that Italian players are having on both tours.
They really are. It's the development has just been off the charts, something everyone can strive for. We had another player come back. She lost her first match, Ted, but I want to give a quick shout out to Barbora Krejcikova, who came back in Strasbourg, first match this year, really dealing with the injury bug. And she is the Wimbledon champ. She won Roland Garros a few years ago. She's got multiple doubles titles, a gold medal. So glad to see her back in the game. Hope she can hit the ground running. Still relatively youthful, so there's an opportunity for her to make moves. But it's just good to have her back in the mix.
There's a name, and think about this. Someday we're likely going to say Barbora Krejcikova, Hall of Famer.
Oh yeah,
what she's achieved. I'm saying what she's achieved. You would suspect that's Newport bound, and I'm saying that's pretty. Most Americans would not probably now don't even remember who she is. Yet she's already has those incredible achievements.
She might have been able to get in with just one slam and all the double stuff, but now it's like a lock, 2 single slams and all the double success. I want to retire. I got to think of a better word for journeywoman. That's the other one too. That gets kind of like, begrudgingly said sometimes. So
that's
but good. Yeah,
that's that. You know what that is? That's the tennis equivalent of game manager. When somebody refers to a quarterback as a game manager,
grinder,
it's backhand.
Yeah,
it's you don't want to do that.
Something like that. Yeah, we don't want that. Yeah, you could be a game manager. A game manager in San Francisco, a quarterback just got like $290 million or whatever. So sometimes it's good to be a game manager.
If you reach that level, you're no longer a game manager. You're a winner. That's what you are.
I would say so. What else can we expect, Ted, from Djokovic this week? Playing Geneva, like we mentioned it. Like he's playing in Switzerland. He's done this before. It's his birthday this week, so he'll be 38 years old, I think, in a couple days. But Djokovic looking for matches and looking for something new without Coach Andy Murray by his side. Yeah. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, that's the interesting part. Of course, there's a couple of angles to it. One is the history part. He's looking to win his 100th, and he had that shot at the end of March here. Didn't happen. And now, you go to a 250 and a shot, he may come out of there next weekend winning that historic
Yeah.
100th title. But of course, again, I hope Novak's not thinking that he's thinking more about, hey, give myself the best chance to have a shot, because we all understand, it's obvious he's only playing for the majors. And the Novak that I spent more time around in his earlier years was one of the most inquisitive people about getting help for himself with his tennis game
Mhm.
that I've ever had a chance to experience. And in our world, we're not there every day with these people, but I was the recipient a couple of times of him asking questions. Can you know how to get in touch with so and so, because I'd like to work on this, and that always just amazed me. And now we've learned, of course, in his personal life, he's been open to a lot of other things,
Yeah.
diet and
Yeah.
oxygen
Yeah.
tanks and whatever. I mean, so it's puzzling that the Murray thing breaks up that fast. I don't have any idea, but
Mhm.
it's pretty clear that Novak has never had the same real consistency since he blew up the long running team with Marian
Mhm.
Vaida being at the helm of it. That team was his foundation. And he's shuffled a lot since then. There are a lot of reasons, I'm sure, why, but he's
Right.
never had the consistent success that he had with that. And he's also older, which is obvious.
Yeah, that's a good part of it too. A good point, because he blew up the consistency of that team, but also as he gets older and as new threats emerge on the horizon, you need to change things up. There's evolve or die, especially in pro sports. So
Right.
he's needed to change stuff up. I didn't want to bring this up too because I saw it this morning when I was scrolling online. There was a clip of him talking about his old coach, the woman, Jencic, who passed away, Yelena Jencic, who
Yes.
passed away. And, obviously he speaks highly. She laid the foundation. But one of the things she did was after matches, when he's so wound up and hyper competitive as a kid, they would actually like read poetry and listen to classical music. And he was talking about it in a sense like it kind of calmed me down. It got me into the right, proper, like calm mindset. And it showed me to not focus on or over focus on one thing.
Yeah.
I just think his well-rounded approach might serve him well in the latter stage of his career, and it's a lesson out there to parents and kids out there that you don't want to be too overly focused and just psych yourself out.
Absolutely. And that's a great point, Mitch. And again, Djokovic long has been a person who's been able to find
Hmm.
that answer to I mean, look, it's a contrast, because what you talked about we know is true. Yet on the court, Novak often in later years has been fueled by anger. He's
Hmm.
never better than when the crowd's against him, and he thinks everybody in the place is against him. And
Hmm.
nothing more, even the Olympic gold medal match last year against Carlitos. I mean, that was pretty amazing
Yeah.
stuff. So the other point, the obvious, I think, tennis point is he's now turning 38, and you're saying, can I win best of fives? Can I win 7 best
Hmm.
of fives? We've said the same thing about Roger. We were going to say the same thing if Rafa had been able to continue.
Yeah.
It's clear. And then how much help does he get? Because at some point you're going to need some help. Do I have to go through both, Sinner and Alcaraz in the same tournament, depending on where
Yeah.
the draw. Right now, you wouldn't have to do that, but if that ever does
Hmm.
happen, or if one of these other young guys, Menchik rises up, whoever the next guy
Hmm.
that's going to push where Alcaraz and Sinner are now, if I have to go through 2 of those in the same event at 38, 39, it's an obvious question, and it's why that last Wimbledon was so painful for Roger, because that was the
Yeah.
one. Everybody knew
Last
it was
chance.
his
Yeah.
last best shot.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. It's just crazy to say that Djokovic, this is where we are. It's what we used to always say about him, right? Best of 5,
Yeah,
fitness,
yeah,
everything. It's crazy. The young gun becomes the old bull
yeah,
pretty fast
yeah.
in the world of sports. But last time he's actually lost at Roland Garros was to Rafa in 22. So it has been a while since he's actually suffered a defeat there. So we'll
And look,
see.
we've seen so many. I mean, RG more than any major we know creates crazy moments. I mean, I'm sitting here and I was looking it up again this morning that it's now 24 years since Michael Russell, who had come through qualifying, reached the round of 16, had a match point against Guga, who had already won it twice. And Guga
Mhm.
hit a forehand, and everybody in the stadium, and I called it when John McEnroe and I were calling the match, and everybody in the stadium thought it was long, and it clipped. It was one of those clipped the ball mark, clipped the baseline by that
Yeah.
much on match point in the third set, and Guga ended up winning
Wow.
in 5 sets and ended up winning his third.
Yeah.
his third
Wow.
consecutive, or not third consecutive, his third overall RG. So I'm saying you can see, the single greatest shot I've ever watched in tennis was Roger Federer's inside-out forehand against Tommy Haas in 2009, the day after Rafa lost. And now everybody knew this is Roger's best chance to win.
Yeah.
And that's the match. If Roger misses that forehand, Tommy Haas is likely going to hold serve and win. Roger makes it, breaks, wins in 5, wins the whole thing a week later. So you just, that's what I love about RG and I've loved over all the years is that it's the most unpredictable.
It really is. When you were saying throwback moments, I thought you were going to go Michael Chang there.
Oh, well, of course, yeah. Yes, I do. I wasn't there. That was before my time, but I do remember
that because that just it's impossible that he pulled it off. Is what I wasn't around either, but against who he did, against Ivan Lendl, against that guy, he was able to figure. It's just incredible
I could
stuff.
remember I was calling baseball somewhere because I remember watching it on television. I mean, that was the point. It was just gripping. I mean, you gotta be kidding me! Look at this.
This teenager.
So it was fun. And of all things, a few years back, when Michael Chang was still working with Kei Nishikori, and this was before Kei had all the bad wrist stuff. We were doing an event somewhere, and I asked Michael, and he said he was working with Kei on the underhand serve, and this was to counteract Rafa at the time. And he said Kei didn't like it. Kei doesn't want to do it. It's that stubbornness. And I had to ask the question because my God, you tell him I hold a trophy because of that serve.
Well. It was incredible stuff. And as we round up this episode, I was going to just mention Roland Garros qualifying. Kei Nishikori isn't in qualifying, but he did beat Werner Tien today. So Nishikori showing some flashes there. But qualifying is always a great time, right? You have all these players, some veterans playing their last Roland Garros, either publicly or privately. So I'm always gripped by just the qualifying leading up to it and seeing who can make it if some more Americans get in the draw. But who's going to get that life-changing qualifying win? Maybe some life-changing money too.
Bernie Tomic won a match, and Bernie Tomic is in qualies. It's funny. This was a few years back at the Australian, and we were calling the qualies on Tennis Channel. And the final round of qualies back then, qualies was Jen Brady against Taylor Townsend. And Taylor looked like she was going to win the match, and Jen Brady came back and snapped it and took the match at the very end, made the main draw, and that started her run. That match started her incredible run that peaks with making the U.S. Open final and ends up being a top 10 player. So again, that's what I love qualies for that. Yeah. Because you never know how that one, especially the last qualifying match. Jensen Brooksby winning Houston a month ago, being down in the first round of qualies, comes back and ends up saving a bunch of match points in the main draw and ends up winning for good. And Jensen, I saw, is in the qualies in one of the, I think it was the Geneva, maybe. He's trying to, he's not playing the qualies at RG. That's what I was saying. He's playing the qualies of a tour event this week.
Hey, Emirata Kanyu, anyone? I mean, that was the other one too, right? Exactly. Like it's pretty remarkable. But Ted Robinson, always a pleasure catching up with you. I know you got, a lot of hard work in Florida at the beach bar to get to. But no, Ted, this is great. It's always good to reminisce, tell some stories, learn a little bit. And always a blast having you on the podcast. So thanks for joining the show.
Well, Mitch, good on you for your perseverance in keeping this going. Well done. So it's my pleasure anytime.
Ted Robinson, always a friend of the show. We appreciate him coming on the Inside In Tennis podcast. It's available on all your podcast platforms. So just go to Apple, Spotify, Amazon, iHeartMusic, wherever you get your podcast, subscribe so it automatically downloads, and leave a nice rating or review when you're there. You can also watch the video episodes like my chat here with Ted Robinson on the YouTube channel at Mitch Michals as well. So subscribe to that if you are so kind. We're back in a few days to talk the Roland Garros draw when it comes out, and the 2025 French Open. It's just a couple days away. I can't wait to get into it. So for Ted Robinson, I'm Mitch Michals. This was the Inside In Tennis podcast. Thank you for listening. I'll talk to you soon.